Welcome to our June program. You're here tonight. We're going to be David Millis, our very own program steering committee and CRES member, is presenting his personal story of his conversion of his house to a all electric home. This old house from the 19th century, the cutting edge of technology. A few announcements beforehand. Our chapter here at the Metro Denver chapter of CRES is to have a carbon neutral Colorado powered by 100% renewable energy. We want to transition Colorado to a new energy economy that is 100% renewable through education, engagement, and creating networking opportunities across all Denver communities. We value renewables, emerging technologies, efficiency, diversity, inclusion, and equity in the community. And remember, we are a statewide, we have chapters in several locations around the state, nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c3 membership organization. We provide education for the members who come in person and online. We also, our mission is to build community, to make connections. And at this point, the technology isn't such that we can make these connections over Zoom. So that's why we encourage everyone to come in person. So thank you all very much who come here. We provide pizza, that's an inducement. But that's the one way that people can make connections, to engage in the entrepreneurial spirit, to find jobs, to find employees, for consultants to find clients for themselves, and for entrepreneurs to catch up ideas and schemes, and organizations to just group together and create something new. This is how we will transform this economy, is through those person-to-person connections. So I'd like to take a moment to thank those who sponsor us. Here's a few of them listed here: Moss Adams, the Pooter Valley REA, Vista, Platte River Power Authority, Centin Instruments, Solaris Energy. We also have COSA, Colorado Solar and Storage Association, BrightSense, Colorado Green Building Guild, ARS, Renewable, Sandbox Solar. So a little appreciation for them. Some upcoming events that are hosted by Electric Avenue on July 5th. And then again on July 22nd, Electric Avenue is hosting Christmas in July. Both in Denver and Pueblo. Both are in person. They will review sustainable all electric cooking. I think they're exchanging recipes, demonstrating the induction cooktop and that sort of thing. They'll also include displays, the latest EVs, e-bikes, as well as demonstrations from utilities and tech companies. And you'll see down here, if you're interested, you can subscribe to our newsletter. And an announcement for our next month's speaker, Nate Blair from InRealm. We're all familiar with battery technology. That's a topic that's discussed here with some regularity. But I felt it was time to have an update. It's been a little while, and Nate Blair from InRealm will give us an update on what's going on with battery technology. So I'm looking forward to that. Right here at the Alliance Center and online.
Good evening. Yes, I am David Millis, and I live in a house that was built in 1885. It has an advanced solar energy system, battery storage, as well as cutting edge heating and cooling, and other features that significantly reduce both utility costs and our carbon footprint. And improves our energy resilience while we're working on it. This house has had a lot of change over the last 140 years. So let's get some perspective, huh? It was built in 1885 in one of the newest suburbs of Denver. A kingly 900 square feet of living space. Originally, it had wood stoves and fireplaces for heat in 3 rooms of the house. No cooling, no indoor plumbing, other than perhaps the kitchen sink, we think. There might have been running water in the kitchen, maybe. And gas lighting, one of my favorite features that no one should ever have, ever again. We actually found the gas pipes up in the attic a few years ago when we were renovating. So, transportation options included walking, horses, of course, at the time, and a new contraption called a bicycle, just recently invented. And streetcars, which also at that time were pulled by horses as well. So by the 1930s, the Five Points neighborhood, that's my neighborhood, was fully redlined. New term that we're all kind of a newer term, but it was fully redlined. But the mostly Black residents built a very proud community, and it was known as the Harlem of the West. At this point, the house probably had coal furnace, we think, and electric lighting, still no cooling, but probably indoor bathroom at this point, which is nice. Major progress. Transportation still includes walking and bicycling and streetcars, and a new thing, automobiles. By the 50s, the house was heated with a central forced air natural gas furnace, well, like a lot of other houses are, even today. Still no cooling though. Transportation still includes the walking and biking, but streetcars have mostly gone away. They've been replaced by buses, and cars are starting to eclipse everything. So that picture on the left, that is what the house looked like in the 1980s. After a tough 100 years of use, it was abandoned for a while, home to squatters and drug addicts. At the time, transportation is now, as many of you some of you will remember, not everyone, some of you will remember, transportation is now largely car focused, with traffic jams, brown clouds, a familiar headache. So I bought the house in 2008, and with my now wife, Robbie, we did some serious renovations in 2012, including some simple but significant energy saving features. Did you know that there's some very humble technologies which can significantly reduce your energy usage and possibly improve your quality of life too? For example, adding a big skylight completely changed the character of the front of the house. And sun tunnels, the thing on the right, these. Anyone know something? Anyone not know what a sun tunnel is? Now, since I can't see what people are saying on.
Could you explain a sun tunnel?
It's a little tiny skylight.
It's weird.
Yeah, round thing, but it doesn't have to be direct. You kind of pipe the sunshine through weird conduit. It literally goes through a conduit, a shiny conduit. So they're fabulous. Also, did you know that using ceiling fans can allow you to turn your thermostat up by 3.7 degrees and still feel as comfortable? Okay, I actually just made that part up, the 3.7 degrees, but the principle is sound. It's true, right? Moving air will keep you comfortable, than cooler still air. We also blew out the back wall of the house and converted the old mud room into a sunroom. Provides amazing passive solar heating in the winter, as well as a fabulous view of the downtown skyline. And don't forget the attic. Adding vents and blowing tons of insulation up there made a huge difference in both heating and cooling. And the whole house fan. A whole house fan is sometimes called an attic fan, depending on where part of the country you come from. This is a fan that essentially, it's a big ass fan that pulls air from the interior of the house, blows it, in this case, up into the attic, where if we didn't put vents in, would have nowhere to go. But we have vents, so it pulls air in. You open any window with the whole house fan going, and you have a lovely breeze. So when the outside temp is extreme, when the outside temperatures aren't extreme, you can turn the whole house on, whole house fan at bedtime to cool the house down nicely while we sleep, and then turn it off when the outside temperature starts climbing the next day. And you can do the inverse when the outside temperatures start to be a little chilly. You turn on the fan in the afternoon when it's warmed up outside, and you warm up the house, and then you shut it off after the sun goes down. So It works beautifully for Colorado for a lot of the year, right? That, what I just described is a lot of days throughout the entire year. So I wonder, why don't we have these sorts of things in a new house? Why aren't these standard issue, right, in new houses? It's such a stupid, simple way to economically and energy efficient, way to heat and cool. Speaking of simple and cool technology, swamp coolers also work beautifully in Colorado. I grew up in Texas, where I've never heard of a swamp cooler. There's a reason for that. It's way too friggin' humid. Watch the language, okay? Can't use the word humid. Oh, wait. So yes, but it turned out we live in a fabulous place, which I'm guessing all of you already knew. Live in a fabulous place. But one of the reasons it's fabulous is because swamp coolers work beautifully here. Use a fraction of the power of a comparable air conditioner. And we also added a completely green solar powered clothes drying system with wind augmentation. So in 2019, we replaced one of our motor vehicles with an electric cargo bike and expanded the clothes dryer by adding 2 more lines in the backyard. But 2 years ago, we decided to move into high gear. Here we go. We replaced that gas furnace with a heat pump. Modern gas furnaces can have efficiencies of over 90%, which is actually pretty good. Does anyone, actually here, real question, does anyone know the efficiency of a heat pump? Higher, says Ben. Good guess. You're correct, by the way. How much higher? What is the efficiency of a heat pump? It could be up to 400% or higher. And yes, we're now violating math by going above 100. And that's because rather than taking the energy and converting it into heat, we're taking energy from the power grid and moving heat. So we're moving heat from outside to inside or inside to outside. So we're taking advantage. So rather, for example, instead of moving a dump truck full of dirt, right, to do something, you're essentially employing guys with shovels to move some dirt from there to there or there to there, rather than bringing it in. So this is why they're so much more efficient. They're not just a little bit more efficient. They're a whole lot more efficient, which is pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. Of course, I might be a nerd, so. Let's see, and there is some bad press going around. It's possible that other people and interests out there are spreading the word. Heat pumps won't work when the temperature's really cold. Everyone knows that. It is known. Game of Thrones reference. It is known. It's not true. Turned out in Norway, virtually all of their buildings are heat pump heated. So if you ever go looking for a heat pump, ask for a cold climate heat pump. Something that I didn't know about. So I got a more moderate heat pump. But anyway, they'll work down to minus 20F or so, where you need to worry about doing something else, going back to maybe a wood burning fireplace, maybe, or something like that. And as a bonus for us, for Robbie and me, the heat pump also provides central air conditioning for the house. That is, it cools in the summer and heats in the winter. So this is the first time that house has had central AC in 137 years. So, which is pretty cool. We added solar photovoltaic. I'm not going to try to pronounce it anymore. It's PV. Solar electric panels to the house. We loaded them up. And we added 20 kilowatt hours of battery storage for the house for all that excess power that we generate. Not only does this allow us to consume power after the sun goes down, but we can also seamlessly survive power grid outages and failures. Fun fact. Howdy. Come on in. Pizza is out there if you want something. Yeah. Okay, fun fact. A house with just PV panels on it, which is most of the residential solar around, if the grid fails, so does your house power. You're gonna be just as dark as your neighbors. It turned out it's for safety reasons. But it's, a lot of people didn't read the fine print and were shocked when the sun is shining, the power grid is down and, you know, and so is that power in their house. So you get around that by adding batteries. Batteries do all sorts of good things. So just remember this, if you add solar PV to your house or to your RV, or anything, add batteries too. They go together, like peanut butter and jelly. We also added solar thermal panels to make hot water. What a cool use for the sun. You're gonna make hot water. The 80-gallon hot water tank associated with this has an electrical resistance heater for backup. So if the sun isn't shining, the tank reverts to being an electric hot water heater. And we replaced our venerable old gas stove with an electric induction stove, which we love. So like the next presentation in July, or there is a presentation in July, they're going to be showing the induction stove and how cool they are. So I was a gas stove bigot. I am now an induction stove bigot. I can heat stuff much faster than I could on my old gas stove and with much more control. And air quality is better in the house. Last I'm making mixed. Sorry, yes, Greg.
So we have a question from the audience, Chris Bott.
Hi, Chris.
He's asking, how did you get Excel Energy to allow you to keep your own solar electric power without adding it to the grid? I presume, and I'm gonna add to that, Chris, if I'm correct, the batteries. I assume you're referring to batteries.
So yes, in this case, the short answer to this, we have a funny little box. I'll show you in a moment. It's a power controller. Essentially, it's a power traffic cop. So you can imagine this is a box that's got a spigot that goes to our house, which we're only sucking from. So we only consume power. There's another spigot coming from the roof panel array that only produces power sometimes. There's another spigot that goes to the batteries, which power can go in either direction on that one. And there's another spigot that goes to the grid, and same thing. Power can go in either direction on the grid link. So you can kind of imagine what the logic looks like behind this. When we have power coming from the roof panels, we use it in the house first. If we still have extra, we charge the batteries if they need charging. If the batteries are all charged up and we're not using the house, then we push it on the grid. It's the way that works. Yes, ma'am.
Following up on that, is there any way to keep your own solar power if you don't have batteries? Or is it like illegal? I understand it's a safety thing in part.
It's more of a physics thing. How would you keep it?
Well, I mean, can you turn off your grid connection and say, hey, solar power that I'm producing right now, heat my house?
So there actually, yeah, this is more of a technology thing. The same power controller that I just described, which has always been added if you have battery. Enphase and probably others are starting to market this, say, hey, if you're only going to put up solar panels, go buy this cool power controller thing, even though you don't have batteries, and it'll do what you just described. If the sun is shining and your grid connection fails, one of the things that the power controller does is cut off the grid connection at that point. And it does it very quickly, within milliseconds. Yeah.
So are you still able to net meter?
Yes. Yes. And there's 2 flavors of that too. We're working on policy stuff, but I refuse to talk about that. So you're sober. Careful. Chris, did that answer the question? Kind of, close enough. How about, you know what, if there's additional questions, Chris, you can ask them at the end. How'd that be? I'm gonna keep going for a moment. So here's all this cool stuff we did. Here's what our roof from above, nice little aerial drone shot. Here's what it used to look like. And here's what it looks like now. So there's the attic vents, don't forget those. Skylights, sun tunnels, yeah. There's the PV panels generating all that fabulous electricity. There's our solar thermal panel. And here's the cinder blocks. Why are there cinder blocks on the roof of my house? I really should look at the roof of my house more frequently. As it turns, it's actually for my internet service provider antenna, but I really wasn't aware that there were cinder blocks on my roof. How many of you know whether there's cinder blocks on your roof or not? Does anyone, are you sure? I thought I was sure too. You just never know. And here we go. And for the fellow nerds out there, here's some analysis. 2023. So we did all these changes in 2022, or the big ones in 2022. So last year was the first full year after we made all those improvements. So the orange line here represents power that our PV array produced. So that's how much power we're producing. And the blue line is what the house consumed. Right, so those are both in kilowatt hours, if anyone cares. The green line at the bottom is our total utility bill from Excel. So here we go. The consumption, and I told you I'm a nerd, so I'm going into this. Consumption is a double sine wave across a 12-month year. So you consume a lot of power in the depth of winter, right? Because you're trying to stay warm and eat more food, probably. At least that's my case. I'm eating more food. And then in the springtime, you don't consume much because it's nice outside. You can keep the windows open. And then in the hottest part of the summer, you consume again. And then a similar cycle in the fall, not much, and then we're back to the winter. So it's a double sine wave. The solar production, not surprisingly, is a single big lump. So it peaks out sometime around the solstice or a little after the solstice. And yeah, it looks a little bit funky in there, but that's okay. There's clouds and rain and stuff too, which affects the data. There's our lowest consumption. Briefly, check this out. During the high consumption in the summertime, we're covered. We're making more electricity than should be legal. And if Excel had their way, it would not be legal, by the way. But the wintertime is when we've got some problems, right? The wintertime, we don't have as much sunshine. The sun is lower, right? All these little things. So, but yet we're still sucking a lot of power. So that's a problem, not just for our house, but for us as a site. Because we're trying to figure out ways to decarbonize our grid. That is an issue. How do we find the power for times like that? Sir.
Yeah, I don't know if you have a deeper answer to that, to why it's so dramatically lower during the wintertime. Because my first thought is the sun's lower and maybe you're experiencing some like shade from trees on your solar panels, or like do you have an idea?
I do.
Yeah.
I'll give the short version of it. The closer we are to the equator, the more even it'll be throughout the entire year. But of course, it's easier for me to imagine putting up solar panels on the Arctic Circle. Right, during the summertime, sun is, 24 hours. It's going around the sky in circles, lots of production. But there are times when it's now literally below the horizon. So my production sinks in that case to zero. So we're somewhere in between. We're high enough latitudes where, in the summertime, the sun will make an arc like that. In the wintertime, it makes an arc like that, which is a double whammy. Not only is it going through more atmosphere, so we get less energy, there's more trees, there's more shade, as you say, and there's less time. So it comes up later, it goes down earlier. So it's a multiple whammy, a multi-whammy scenario. I'm going to trademark that.
That's what you just like that term.
Yeah, multi-whammy.
Yeah, I'm curious what the curve would look like for like a utility scale, like solar farm where you have like axis tracking, right? Because on the rooftop, it's just sitting and it's just pointing.
Right, but even then, it's going to be the same problem.
Yeah,
right? And you know what I mean?
To some- to a certain degree,
You're gonna be sucking, I'm sorry, you're gonna be pulling more solar power more efficiently with tracking, but you still have less sun.
The
regardless.
y-axis will be higher, right? The number on the y-axis will be different, greater, but it's probably a similar.
Similar curve.
similar
That's-
curve,
that's
it's
a good
just
way to
not
put it.
as, maybe not as dramatic as that. I was just
Yeah.
surprised that it's that dramatic on.
Well, and remember, this is 1 year of data, because that's all I've got. So far, but I expect, I think this is gonna be fairly representative.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite parts of my graph, the Excel bills. How come they're not zero, one might ask? Because by the way, those are, we get these bills and say, electricity used, 0 kilowatts hours. Gas used, 0 kilowatt hours. In fact, Excel called me last summer. They said, we're sending someone out to find out what's wrong with your gas leak. And there may be a gas leak, but you may be ready to blow up. So anyway, talk to them and we figured out, oh, it's because you're not really using much gas. We do have gas backup for a furnace, for a heat pump, for really cold days, so we are still using some gas. But this is pretty cool. So Excel charges you a base amount for the privilege of being connected to the electric grid and being connected to the gas grid. And it's around 20-something bucks a month for Denver. Anyway, I don't know if that's true everywhere, but that's where it is for you. Here's my gas. The red line is 2022. That's the before gas bills, and 2020, and the blue one is the later one. So we didn't quite cut our gas bills in half, but pretty close. And here's our electric. Ha, love this one. Red is before and blue is after. So we're coming in at what, about a third or so, which is pretty cool. That's our total cost. So that's the total, just looking at the bill, not looking at kilowatt hours or therms, which I guess is how gas, that's the unit for gas. So there we go. We saved almost 900 bucks in 2023. Not bad. And yes, if we found a way to completely get rid of our gas line, actually, that would be significant. Because then we would be paying the base charges for the gas. Still, that ain't bad.
Well, right now, it's like some thousands of dollars to completely disconnect.
Well,
There's no,
well,
they
okay.
charge you like a disconnection fee and it's this. like,
Well,
absurd.
yeah, no, I'm sure they would. Yes, they're gonna do something. Of course they would. I am saddened by the fact that when I was doing the homework on heat pumps, I did not know about cold climate heat pumps, and I believed the vendor who said, oh yeah, this is only gonna work down into about this temperature. Trust me. And I did, and I shouldn't. Now, mind you, the vendor did a good job. But they put in a heat pump that's kind of okay. If only I know, right? And in fact, I'm gonna talk about here now on the dollars. Turns out you can also get money back for going with a cold climate. Cold climate heat pumps cost more, not surprisingly. But there are ways to help with that. So here we go. Here's the big ticket items. That we spent. This is full cost before anything. So the heat pump was just under 17, and the big one, which was the solar panels, the batteries, MSP. That's our main service panel. That's the taking down our poor little electric panel breaker box, which was about the size of a lunch box on the back of our house. You know, and then changing it. In fact, you saw a picture earlier with the before and after. It is little teeny thing in the box. And I've got this whole wall full of stuff now outside. Anyway, it came to about 75,000. Minus 33 million. So the federal, some of y'all are probably familiar with the federal, there's some tax incentives, right, which we took advantage of. If you are a Denver resident, any Denver residents here? Several, very, very good. I'm hoping people on Zoom call are holding their hand up, hoping that others can see them holding their hand. There is something called the Denver Climate Action rebates, excuse me, plural. They put these together actually in 2022. This is partly why we decided to go ahead and move and do this and spend the money in 2022. These are amazing rebates, and they put them together in a very clever fashion. So our solar provider, the one who did all this stuff, they're the ones that talk to the city. The rebates are straight off of the invoice price. So they said, okay, here's all the work we're gonna do for you. But then they apply the rebates directly, deal with the city. The city sends them the money, and I pay just the net. So I didn't fill out a single form. I did nothing other than prove that I was a Denver resident. They're really, really good rebates. And of course, the purpose of them is to try to incentivize people to convert to heat pumps. At the very least, get rid of the old coal-fired furnace, right, with poor guys down there, poor Irishmen shoveling coal, down, yeah, get rid of that and go with a good heat pump. Please, go with a cold climate heat pump. And they'll rebate for those too. So, anyway, that's not bad. That's a significant amount of money back, which was nice. If you look at everything, we're talking about 45% reduction in the cost, which ain't bad. There were some other costs that, no, we didn't get any rebates or, things like that, right?
This is pre-IRA, correct?
Yes, it's
What?
pre,
Inflation reduction.
exactly. So the Inflation Reduction Act added, I think, some additional, and they extended also some other things. But for example, there's some things I was told by a wise person, do not put solar panels onto a roof that's going to need to be replaced in the next 20 years. Because you have to pull those panels off, which is expensive and a pain in the ass. Anyway, so I replaced the shingles on the facets that we were putting panels on. We also got an induction stove, anything back for that. Solar thermal, there is the federal thing includes some help with that, but Denver does not. Denver does not do any solar thermal things. So we spent some money. We spent some money in 2022, about 60 grand or so. Why? Why would you spend, that much money? And of course, there's multiple answers. Robbie and I really do want to live lighter, reduce our carbon footprint, reduce our power needs, just live a little more lightly. We also like the fact, I hear, I remember getting a text recently from one of my neighbors saying, hey, is your power out too? Oh. Then of course I checked the app, my solar app. Why, looky there, the grid's turned off. So anyway, so that's nice too, right? Having some resilience that, if power fails, we can survive that. We're looking at policy ways to make some money off of this. That's not yet, by the way. Can't really make money yet. Residential solar doing this. But really the biggest reason why is this is Milo. Milo is my grandson. He was born a few months ago. And I struggle, I don't know, I suspect we all struggle a little bit with all the bad news. It's pretty easy to get overwhelmed with the needs and the challenges ahead of us. But actually I take heart and I was like, okay, you know what? This is worth doing some stuff for Milo and the ones that come after us. So, and at this point, I'm going to recap. Here's the journey. We started in 1885, and where are we now? So we've gone from wood-fired and gas lights to we are able to operate mostly off the grid. As you saw in the little graph, for most of the year, we can operate without the grid, which is pretty cool. And tiny little note in there. It's actually a completely different presentation about the joy of e-cargo bikes and e-bikes and kind of not driving around everywhere. So we're part of a shift also, which is a greater shift of people, hey, maybe going back to walking and bicycling. Remember those from 1885? They're making a resurgence, which is pretty cool. So there's some nice stuff happening. And yes, there's the homestead now. And I will take questions at this point. And first, I will thank you for your attention and some good questions. Vince,
Are you financing any of your equipment?
we did not.
What was it? Yeah, just, can you walk us through the thought process there? And you felt comfortable?
So, we're in a position where we were able to spend in 2022. I came from the tech space, that's where I've been most of my years, working in software and such. Company called Splunk, for those of you who might know the tech space. And Splunk was good to us, so. But there are some good financing out there. There is a Colorado entity whose name I've forgotten, but it was the legislature put it together a few years ago. Its entire purpose in life is acting as kind of like a credit union for people who are trying to finance residential solar batteries. So they're a clearinghouse. They vet these other lenders, right, to make sure, because there's of course bad actors out there like there is everywhere, but they vet them and they simplify the process for people to go after and get financing. So I saw just a little bit of it. I'm sorry.
Colorado Clean Energy Fund?
That's it. Ben for the win. Colorado Clean Energy Fund. And yes, you can Google and go to the website, but it's really a very cool entity for helping people find some decent financing for whatever they're trying to do. So I'm sorry, whatever they're trying to do, meaning specifically, I know it's solar PV panels, batteries. It might include other things too, because I'm doing solar residential these days. So that's what I was focused on. I don't know if it includes other things like getting an induction stove or putting in solar thermal or things like that, but it certainly could help.
Yeah, these days you can like finance anything. It's just maybe not all through the same entity, but.
Yes, your Visa card would love for you to finance that.
Well, so I think the point being is that, $60,000, cash is a hard pill for a lot of people. It's a pill a lot of people can't swallow. So the idea behind financing is that, okay, we pay a little bit a month over time. You see some saving, you see some savings on your bill every month.
Right.
And that's offset a little bit. So.
Right. So the return on investment numbers. So if you spend this money financed or not, how long will it take you saving money to kind of break even? The answer is if you go solar panel only, which I told you, do not ever do solar panel only, but you can get it down to 6 or 8 years return typically. If you had batteries, it's going to take you up to 10 or 12 years probably. Go ahead.
So if you put out like 60 grand and you're only saving, well, how much are you saving a year? Because
So that $800.
a year, that's a lot.
Yes.
Is that a year? So that's.
Yeah, that math doesn't add up, if it's just a year. Right?
That may have just been the electric. I think that one was just. I don't think I had a slide with all the utility savings other than the grass or the lines on it. Yeah, and at some point, we are thinking this way now. Couple thoughts, just to encourage you or invite you to look at things a little bit different. My house did not have a toilet inside it. Not a priority. That's how we do things, right? What is the return on investment for putting in an indoor toilet inside the house? What's the ROI look like on that?
Mhm.
I don't know. what's the ROI look like, to put in some sort of cooling? Well, my house didn't have cooling for 137 years. Hey, Colorado's not bad. Well, it used to be not very bad. It's getting a little warmer. So a lot of these features, all the components you're seeing, the solar panels, the batteries, all of them, the prices are continuing to drop. We had some hiccups around the pandemic, but the overall trend is still continuing downwards. I really do think that we're going to be seeing, most new construction will be heat pumps. I really do think we need to be getting to panels and batteries everywhere that support. And I wouldn't be surprised if we are heading in that direction. So, go ahead.
I think it's also interesting to point out that what you did was a lot of different projects at once,
Correct.
right? It's not necessarily something of like, you need to do all of these today. Those could be, not to say that you couldn't, but there were a number of things, including in the cost that you added, that were just like.
Induction stoves, for example.
Well, or even just the panel, the roof, the redoing your roof.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
If you had just done that or had to have done that anyways,
Right.
you probably would not have put that on the.
Yeah. So yes, there is some spend. Rob and I feel fortunate we're in a position that we can do it. With financing, it makes it more available to more. Even with that, I would also suggest that we be thinking about our grandchildren when we're looking at the calculus. It's like, no, I don't know. Do I really want an 11-year payoff period for this? Well, maybe you do. Maybe there's legacy that maybe we should consider doing that now, even with a 11 or 12-year payoff.
Keegan Myers, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. He says, what are your thoughts on joining a VPP once the pilot is available? Do you know what
A VPP is, for those of you who are not uber solar policy nerds, is a virtual power plant. The idea here is, you're probably familiar with a big commercial, bunch of wind turbines, for example, generating megawatts, or a big, huge array of solar panels, right, that generates a whole lot of power. Well, turns out if you took my house and all the other houses in the neighborhood that have got panels on top, you could add those up piecemeal to being able to generate a pretty good amount of power. So the term virtual power plant is the concept of aggregating all of these residential smaller installations, so that you can kind of control them and do this, and it acts just like a big old commercial power plant. And the Colorado PUC has directed Excel to produce a VPP pilot project RFP this summer, which is coming right up. With the possibility of getting started in the fall. And I'm not holding my breath on that. Now, I'm trying very hard. I'm not gonna go beat up on Excel, but I wouldn't be surprised if it slips a little bit. So I am excited. That was a long-winded way of first answering what is a VPP and what's going on here in Colorado. And yes, I am monitoring that. I would love to be a part of that. I'm watching and monitoring that project very closely.
Why would you be incentivized to do so? Or what's the incentive to do so versus your current setup?
Okay, so why would I do it versus not doing it? So I'm gonna go into net metering briefly. Net metering is this thing that was created, this idea that was created years ago, and most states, including Colorado, followed. Back in the early days, early adopters would put up some solar panels, mostly hippies. And occasionally those panels would produce more power than the house was using. And so we push out to the thing. And in those days, the electric meter was a mechanical thing with a little thing that ran circles. So literally the little wheel would spin backwards when you were pushing power out on the grid. But the power person who would come and look at the meter reader, that's the term I was looking for, they don't know how much it's spun this way versus how much it's spun this way. So they would only look at the net spinning. You know, is this thing increased by this much or decreased by this much after a month? So they called it net metering. And if it was negative, that is, if you produce more power than you consumed, the power company would pay you at the same rate that you would have paid them to pull the power. So if you pay 10 cents a kilowatt hour to pull power, they would pay you 10 cents a kilowatt hour for the extra power that you pushed out. Pretty cool. Very simple, works nice. It also means that in the wintertime, you know, you've got a little bank of credit, right, to kind of pull against. Because you know, we don't have as much sunshine. Eventually, where we are now with with Excel's Colorado net metering plan, you can do that, but they don't give you real money. They will merely give you a credit, which you can't roll over, you can't convert that into money, you can't assign that to 90-year-old Mrs. Heron next door who could really use it more than we do. You can't do any of that. It is monopoly money, kind of a credit against your possible utility bills. So that's still the way most residential solar installations are designed. They're designed around, we're gonna put just enough panels so that you produce on average the same amount of power that you're used for the entire year. Right, gonna kind of do it that way. So that your net metering after 12 months ought to be just about zero. So my thought as an engineer and a person concerned with the planet is, why wouldn't I put up all the panels that my roof can hold? It doesn't cost that much more, by the way, to put this many panels instead of this many panels. Why wouldn't I do that, right? And push the extra power out that, you know, so that Mrs. Heron and the planet and everyone else can benefit from it. What a great idea. We're not compensated that way. And the policies don't support that. So,
But the PPPs would,
yes, PPP now becomes almost like a commercial power plant. So Excel would negotiate with the virtual power plant and say, okay, how much power are you gonna generate? Okay, this is how much we will pay you to supply us power under these conditions. Just like they would negotiate with a natural gas turbine power plant or a bunch of wind turbines out on the eastern plains. So it's a different economic model. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna get into this, at least not sober.
again, you're sober.
Yeah,
There might be, so yeah, the advantage it could be, right, that you're more of like an active participant in the energy market, whereas like if it's
correct,
net metering, you're kind of a passive participant, I would say.
correct,
So you might be more accurately compensated for the value of the energy like being produced.
correct.
You know.
And by the way, there is a relatively simple way to do this that would let the market do it and we wouldn't even need VPPs. That would be for the utility companies like Excel to pay people like me above market rates for certain times of day. Turns out the peak periods that the grid really needs power is about the time the sun goes down. When the sun is up, there is actually quite a bit of solar power. So we're doing good when the sun is up. But when the sun goes down, people are cooking dinner, they're mucking around until bedtime, 10 p.m. or so. So that period between sundown and 10 p.m. that's when they fire up their little natural gas peaker plants and, oh crap, we need more power. So guess what? If you incentivized the residential solar industry and said, you know what, between sundown and 10 p.m., we will pay you this much above retail for any power that you will give to us.
Well, they're certainly charging us above.
They are. So, but what this would do is people would go, okay, I want to do solar on my house. Ooh, but if I have some extra after the sun goes down, I could monetize that. I could sell it. I need batteries to do that. So suddenly it makes sense to add batteries to the equation. And you could, in this way, in a relatively simple way, both incentivize people to add too many solar panels, add batteries, you know, and increase a bunch of this stuff. And you wouldn't need a VPP. You wouldn't. And from a software perspective, this is trivial. My system could already do this. If that were available right now, my poor little system could handle that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, are your batteries big enough where you could you have the energy you need during peak time, and that you could actually sell some of that back to the grid.
There,
And so you're covered, but you're also selling the
correct,
excess.
correct, and in that scenario, guess what I would do? I would, as soon as the sun went down, whenever that is, I would tell my batteries, dump to the grid. Until you're empty, right? I mean, they're dump in such a way that I'm not sucking before 10 PM, right? So during the magic period, push power out, save me a little reserve so I can get past 10 PM, and at 10:01. I'm gonna pull from the grid again, and at night, the power right now, the rates are very low. So that's how the economics would work in that case. As it is right now, I have no incentive to give my power back to the grid. So I hang on to it and keep the house running. Our whole house fan turning all night long, right? And all those sorts of things.
So the Excel has a residential battery program.
They do, it's a new one.
But yeah, but it's not like per kilowatt hour. So it's just like a flat whatever based on the power, which isn't great. Like, I think what would be ideal is to like pay you for what you're contributing to the grid, not
I
just
think
like the
that would be a simple
potential.
way to do it, but what
Yeah.
do I know?
So that there is incentives out there, but it's not the best incentive, and it could be
Correct.
structured in a better way.
So I live in an 1890 house, except mine is over.
Yeah, this month.
And we're considering solar right now, and we've had many estimates. We also need a new roof, and our house is 6,000 square feet. So, every time though we've gotten a pitch from some solar company, my husband's also an engineer and wants to max it out.
Which is
They
what I did.
don't want to do that,
Correct.
you know, and it's really hard. Like I learned some things today that the last guy who pitched us was saying something different, so
Yeah,
I'm a little wary.
as you should be. There are unfortunately some bad actors. There are some bad people out there selling solar. Tiny pitch, because it's a protocol violation to stand up here on a press night and pitch your own company. I work for a residential solar company. We do this sort of thing. And part of the reason it's the same company that installed at my house. So I now work for them.
Huh?
Part of the reason I went with them is for that reason. I talked to a company that said, I want to load up my roof. They said, you don't. I said, well, yeah, I do. I want to do this. I want to add batteries. You want to add batteries? You're an idiot.
Yeah, it's
I said, okay, thank you for talking to me. And I was, anyway, I'd be happy to circle around if you want to talk to yet another.
You know what,
But
you and Robbie can come over for some coffee or dinner.
I like it.
All right,
Add alcohol and we're there.
all right.
One question, you've heard this question from me before, Dave, but I think it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds, especially I will profess to speak for the common consumer, because this is a question I always have. And my wife wants a warm house, so do I. But what is the subjective? I mean, you've done a good job with the numbers and the finances and that sort of thing. What's it like from a subjective standpoint? I've heard from folks, and you're the first person I know that has a heat pump that I can talk to. What is the warmth experience or the ambient temperature experience like in a heat pump heated house?
Okay, cool question. Heat pumps generate the air temperature coming out of the vent is lower than with that gas fired furnace. So it's not as tough, but the cats still fight over, the theater of issues. So it might take longer. On the other hand, we also installed a bigger air fan right in the central part, so it moves more air. So I haven't noticed it, and you can put your thermostat wherever you want to. If you want to keep it at tropical levels, you certainly can.
Has Robbie noticed it?
I don't think she has. We talked about that a little bit. There's another strange subjective factor. Now that we're generating our own power and we're aware of it, we live differently. So we think more about turning that light off. I don't want to quite, maybe I'm not to obsessive levels, but I might be there. But it very much is. I got home after about week in Dallas and my house was hot and stuff, I turn on the swamp cooler rather than turning on the heat pump. Heat pump's efficient, swamp cooler is even more efficient. So I'm thinking in these terms, and I also turn on my ceiling fans, so it felt very nice. But I'm thinking in those terms, whereas 10 or 15 years ago, who cares, man? Just, move the thermostat down and here we go, So we think differently now that we can see what our power usage is doing. It's a lot like talking to someone who does home gardening, grows their own vegetables. Any of y'all do home gardening? You start obsessing over kind of what the meal's gonna look like. The friends I've done this, they do. And very much start obsessing over what are we gonna eat, how much are my tomatoes versus buying them in King Supers and anyway, all this sort of stuff. It's a similar sort of a obsession, I think. Yes, ma'am.
To kind of piggyback off of your example, I've spoken with some people about similar stuff, and one of the things to know about heat pumps is that you can't crank it up to bring your temperature down fast, right? So if you want to cool off quickly, you kind of have to do the swamp cooler or something like that, right? Because my understanding at least is that heat pumps aren't made to do a dramatic change. They're meant to run like this, at this steady rate kind of all the time. Is yours not like that?
No, they're not supposed to run all the time. So they still are supposed to run kind of in, when the thermostat says go, it turns itself on and blows cold air, blows warm air for a while and then turns itself off. But yes, the delta T, the difference in temperature, cooler or warmer than the ambient is smaller than it would be with either a gas furnace or a conventional old AC unit. So you're right, it probably does take longer. In our case, it's blowing harder, so I haven't noticed it takes longer, so.
So is your thermostat set at a constant temperature all the time, or do you
No,
have?
that's thermostat, so we're still nerds, even with that.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's right, like maybe one of the benefits of a heat pump is like if you had your thermostat so if you didn't have like dramatic shifts in temperature, like if you were like setting it at like 60 overnight and then like 70 during the day or whatever, like in the winter time.
Right.
Like if you were keeping it a little bit more stable, is that more energy efficient? Is it like what?
I'm sure there's some cool studies out there that talk about that. Actually, I did see some studies. Is it better to keep your night temperature a little warmer so that it doesn't take as big of a bump to get you, or to cool you down at the end of the day? There are some studies and I cannot remember what they are. But I'm gonna blame it on age and being way too hot in Dallas. But there are some studies on that. Again, for us, we haven't noticed the heat pump, we haven't noticed a lifestyle change or, oh shit, we need to go set this to this because this is now different. We haven't noticed. Now, mind you, so remember the square footage on my house from one of the first slides? Yes, so now, hey, we added a sunroom, so we're probably about 950 now. So it's not a big house. So granted, your mileage may vary, right?
Yeah.
If you've got a bigger house. But it turned out there's heat pumps, ways to do that. You can put little heat pumps in different zones of your house. They're called mini splits. So that you can kind of keep that section at a different temperature than that, or upstairs is always too much of that, or downstairs is too little of this, or so there are ways to kind of do where there's technology to actually kind of address that, which is also different.
There was a speaker, and I've been stalling to bring this point up because I can't remember the name of the group that spoke in this.
Just make it up, right?
Yeah, it was some certified building, the passive house, where they've got some their own standards and codes and so on. If I'm remembering correctly, the speaker there recommended keeping your house, but I don't know if that just applies to their particular design of house, which is based on these standards. A steady state temperature, not to drive it up and down. They found better results in terms of efficiency. Now, I guess you go on vacation, it's probably okay to drop the temperature, but.
Well, but on a well-built house with, say, lots of insulation, it's not gonna get very hot in the summer and it's not gonna get very cold in winter, even if you do nothing, which to their point is what you want, right? We have the way to build these things. Wouldn't it be great if we actually built things that way? So.
Well, that brings me back to my question I was gonna ask earlier is did you, I missed the beginning, as you know, but did you or have you considered putting in more insulation to just,
We did, we blew some up in the attic. So you missed that slide. But in our case, the brick walls that are around are in fact the brick walls. So that's it. We could put a layer of something on this, but I haven't gotten to the headache level of wanting to deal with that yet. Maybe someday. It'd be cool to have the only LEED certified, 5 points, 1885 house in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's like the thought, right, is you should be doing energy efficiency first before
Absolutely.
you do the heat pump, because,
Yeah. No, absolutely. We're actually, before you do anything, right?
before you do anything.
Before you do anything. So yes, a big, beautiful, sunroom window. I'm not sure, we spent too much money on that. I'm sorry, we spent more than the usual. It's a miraculous material. I don't know what it is. It's a huge window in the dead of winter. It's cold out there. It's blowing, it's Arctic, I can, if I'm standing next to the window, normally you can tell when you're standing next to a window, you can feel the radiation, you know what I mean? You can feel the cold radiating. There's no difference between this window and standing next to a wall. So I don't know what miraculous materials they built it out of, but we have some cool technologies for helping us with this. Well, this has been good. I'm sorry for the Zoom crew, that we couldn't, let y'all talk. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David, for a very informative talk. We will see everyone next month, hopefully, and enjoy your night.